Good afternoon. On behalf of the Bureau of Justice Assistance and the National Treatment Court Resource Center, I want to welcome you to the Adult Treatment Court Discretionary Grant Program webinar around the fiscal year 2024 competitive grant announcement. I'm Christina Lanier, one of the co-directors of the National Treatment Court Resource Center, along with my other co-director, Kristen Duvall, will be facilitating this webinar for Bureau of Justice Assistance. A little bit of housekeeping issues here for today's webinar. As you can see here, there are some directions around if you're having difficulties hearing the webinar. Also, we would ask that you put the questions that you have for the panelists in the Q&A box. This is located in the center of your bar that has all of your functions. There's also live captioning available. We'll answer the questions, most of the questions at the end, but feel free to submit your questions throughout the presentation. The recording, the transcript, and the PowerPoint will be posted to the BJA and NTCRC websites, along with the frequently asked questions that will include the questions and answers that you submit today. I'm pleased to present our two facilitators for today, Ingrid Madison and Courtney Stewart.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ingrid Madison. I'm the Supervisory Senior Policy Advisor, managing the Adult Treatment Court portfolio. Looking forward to this presentation, and any questions that you have, please insert them in the chat.
Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Stewart, and I am a BJA Policy Advisor, and I oversee the Veterans Treatment Court program and also the Community Courts program. Again, we'd like to thank you for your interest. And if you have any questions, please be sure to put them in the chat. We will review the questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Here's our agenda for today, so you know what we're going to cover. We'll start with some welcome and introductions, give you a brief overview of the Office of Justice Programs and the Bureau of Justice Assistance. We'll talk about adult treatment court appropriations, priority areas, talk about the grant categories, eligibility, and requirements for applying, provide you with some tips for applicants, some application resources, and then, as mentioned, we'll go through the questions and answers that you post in the Q&A box at the end of the presentation. Again, feel free to post those questions and answers throughout the presentation. And we'll get started. The first thing that we're going to do is a quick poll question. We are just starting the webinar, but we're curious to know, do you plan to apply for the ATC solicitation that we're talking about today? I'm going to launch a poll. We'll give you a few minutes to answer that question. Give you a few more seconds to answer that question. It's great to see such a high number. We're almost to 60%, indicating that they're going to apply. Great. We'll go ahead and end the poll. All of the poll results from today's webinar will be included in the frequently asked questions as well. So 58% said yes, 3% said no, and 38% are undecided. We certainly hope that today you will be able to find more information and make applying for this grant easier, and you'll move your answer up to yes. All right, we'll turn it over to Ingrid and Courtney.
And welcome to the fiscal year 24 Adult Treatment Court Solicitation Webinar. So what is the Office of Justice Programs? The Office of Justice Programs, or OJP, provides grant funding, training, research, and statistics to the criminal justice community. As you can see on the right side of your slide, there are 6 components to OJP. And OJP is one of the 3 grant-making components of the Department of Justice, along with the Office on Violence Against Women and the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, which is also known as COPS. The Bureau of Justice Assistance was created in 1984 to reduce violent crime, create safer communities, and reform our nation's criminal justice system. BJA strengthens the nation's criminal justice system and helps America's state, local, and tribal jurisdictions reduce and prevent crime, reduce recidivism, and promote a fair and safe criminal justice system. Next slide. How does BJA support the field? BJA supports the field in 3 ways: through investments, sharing knowledge, and engagement. Next slide. Adult Treatment Court appropriations. As you can see, appropriations for the Adult Treatment Court program have grown over the years. Our current appropriation for Adult Treatment Court is $95 million. Next slide. Fiscal year 24 Adult Treatment Court appropriations will support the following. They will support the Adult Treatment Court program, the National Treatment Court Training and Technical Assistance, National Treatment Court Resource Center, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, and research, evaluation, and analysis of treatment courts. The next slide. OJP priority areas. The first OJP priority area, or Area 1A, applications that propose projects that are designed to meaningfully advance equity and remove barriers to accessing services and opportunities for communities that have been historically underserved, marginalized, adversely affected by inequity, and disproportionately impacted by crime, violence, and victimization. OJP's priority area 1B is applicants that demonstrate that their capabilities and competencies for implementing their proposed projects are enhanced because they, or at least one proposed subrecipient that will receive at least 40% of the requested award funding as demonstrated in the budget web-based form, are a population-specific organization that serves communities that have been historically underserved, marginalized, adversely affected by inequity, and disproportionately impacted by crime, violence, and victimization. BJA's adult treatment court priorities include serving high-risk and high-need participants as determined by a validated risk assessment tool, adheres to the All Rise Drug Court 10 key components and best practice standards, ensure equity and inclusion via collection of retention and access data, provides access to medication-assisted treatment, or MAT, makes all forms of FDA-approved medication to treat SUD available to participants under care of a physician, supports veterans and tribal communities, and partnership with law enforcement. Next slide. Now I will be passing the presentation along to Ingrid. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. So on to grant categories, eligibility, and requirements. So our program goal is to provide adult treatment court agencies, their partners, and criminal justice professionals with the resources needed to plan, implement, enhance, and sustain evidence-based treatment court strategies for individuals, with substance use disorders who are involved in the criminal justice system in order to reduce recidivism, increase access to treatment and recovery support, and prevent overdose. The adult treatment court solicitation has 3 categories for which applicants can apply under. Category 1, planning and implementation grants are available to eligible jurisdictions ready to a 6-month planning phase followed by an implementation phase for an evidence-based adult treatment court. Under Category 2, enhancement grants are available to eligible jurisdictions with an operational adult treatment court. A few examples on how funding may be used under this category would be to scale up existing court programs, improve quality and/or intensity of services based on needs assessments, or enhance court operations. Under Category 3, state applicants may apply for funding to improve, enhance, or expand adult treatment court services statewide. Statewide activities may include scaling up capacity for one or more local, state, or tribal adult treatment program, delivering statewide training and technical assistance, or collecting data and conducting analysis to assess the practice. Applicants may request funds to support a veteran treatment court docket and veteran-related services under all 3 categories of this adult treatment court solicitation. However, funding to specifically plan, implement, and enhance a veteran treatment court is available under the BJA Veteran Treatment Court Discretionary Grant Solicitation. A little bit more information on category details. It's recommended that an eligible entity, for example, a unit of local government or county, applying to categories 1 and 2 on behalf of an adult treatment court, attach a fiscal agent memorandum of understanding. The 6-month planning phase requires all new grantees to participate in a BJA-sponsored free foundational training if not received in the past 12 months. Foundational training trains court teams on the skills necessary to build a program that integrates court and treatment functions and adheres to best practice standards. Next slide, please. Under eligibility, in addition to the entities eligible to apply under categories 1 and 2, public or private entities acting on behalf of a single treatment court through agreement with state, city, township, county, or tribal governments can also apply. Under Category 3, BJA will consider applications under which 2 or more entities would carry out the federal award. However, only one entity may be the applicant. Any others must be proposed as subrecipients or subgrantees. Types of courts. Adult treatment courts, DUI or DW courts, co-occurring courts, in addition to tribal healing courts, all fall under the adult treatment court umbrella. And all of these different types of courts are eligible to apply. Application deadlines. Please ensure that you have enough time to develop your application. The due date is also listed on the first page of the solicitation. Take into account the time required to register and to apply, to prepare the documents in the application, and gather all the required attachments, and complete any local, state, or tribal review process. The first deadline is May 2nd on gov.grants.gov. The second deadline is May 9th on Just Grants. Second poll question. What type of treatment court services will you be requesting BJA funds to support? Okay, hopefully everybody has put their answer in the poll. And moving on to the next slide. Treatment court services supported by BJA. I would like to mention that the adult treatment courts are a priority for our director, Mr. Carlton Moore. Other services that can be used for these funds are for equipment, training, evaluation, management information systems, aftercare support, enhancing risk and needs assessment screenings, performance reporting, transportation, drug testing services and supplies, electronic monitoring, drug court staffing positions, MAT services, temporary housing supports, peer supports, and peer mentors as well. With regard to capacity, please determine if your agency has the capacity to do the work or if you need additional resources. Also identify community-based organizations and agencies to partner with to address potential gaps. Handing it back over to Courtney.
Thank you. In our next section, we will talk about the application steps. Planning and organizing. Before submitting an application, all applicants must register with the System for Award Management, or SAM.gov. An applicant must renew their registration every 12 months. An expired registration can delay or prevent application submission into grants.gov and Just Grants. There is a two-step process that begins in grants.gov and is completed in Just Grants. OJP recommends that applicants submit the complete application package in Just Grants at least 48 hours prior to the Just Grants deadline. An applicant will receive emails when successfully submitting in grants.gov and Just Grants and should maintain all emails and other confirmations received from sam.gov. So what happens if you miss the deadline due to unforeseen technical issues? OJP will only consider requests to submit an application after the deadline when the applicant can document that a technical issue with a government system prevented submission of the application on time. An applicant can submit a waiver after the deadline. The waiver will not be considered unless it includes documentation of attempts to receive technical assistance to resolve the issue prior to the application deadline. A tracking number is the most typical documentation and is generated when the applicant contacts the applicable service desk to report technical difficulties. Next slide. Basic minimum requirements. This solicitation identifies basic minimum requirements that an applicant must meet to move forward to peer review. The critical elements include the proposal abstract, the budget web-based form, and the timeline web-based form. Next slide. A proposal abstract should be no more than 400 words summarizing the proposed project, including its purpose, primary activities, expected outcomes, the service area, intended beneficiaries, and sub-recipients, if known, must be completed in the Just Grants web-based form. This abstract should be in paragraph form without bullets or tables, written in third person, and exclude personally identifiable information. The abstract should identify the program type, pre or post adjudication, number of participants proposed to receive services, identify the minimum, maximum, and average length of program participation, and who will be the target population. In addition, whether the court has access to MAT. Abstracts will be made publicly available on the OJP and USA Spending.gov websites if the project is awarded. Detailed information can be found in pages 18 and 19 of the solicitation. The proposal narrative. The proposal narrative should be submitted as an attachment in Just Grants. The applicant may include tables, charts, and graphs as part of the proposal narrative. These items will count towards the page limit unless included as a separate attachment. For each category, the applicant must provide verified sources for the data that support the description of the issue. For example, the U.S. Census or other federal, state, and local data. For all categories, the applicant should explain their inability to fund the program adequately without federal assistance, indicate whether their jurisdiction is leveraging any other federal funding sources, indicate whether the jurisdiction has an active treatment court grant with BJA, SAMHSA, or OJJDP, describe current resources available and the gaps the applicant seeks to address, and define the proposed target population, including criminogenic risk levels. Next slide, please. Additional points to include in the project design and implementation section are if priority category 1A. If you are seeking priority category 1A, describe how the project will address issues related to racial equity. Describe the applicant's plan to ensure that all individuals eligible for the treatment court program will have equivalent access to the program, and explain how treatment providers will be selected and how the treatment court will monitor the providers. Additional information can be found on pages 22, 23, and 24 of the solicitation. Under capabilities and competencies, define any research partners or analytical staff members who will support data collection, analysis, and research, including their roles and goals. Attach the job description and resumes of key staff members, and attach a letter of support from the local court outlining its commitment to the project. In describing the program's plan for collecting data, all applicants must indicate their willingness and ability to report the data through BJA's performance measurement tool, or PMT, as well as identify the person responsible for collecting the data. Next slide, please. The timeline web-based form should outline goals, objectives, and deliverables to be met by each fiscal year and quarter. It must also summarize major activities, expected dates of completion, and responsible agencies. It should also indicate the number of program participants to be served quarterly. And you can also see the solicitation for specific expected deliverables based on the category for which you are applying. Next slide, please. Planning and organizing your budget. Draft your budget early. Please draft your budget as early as possible, because as you move forward with your application, you may have to change your budget around a bit, and you don't want to do that at the last minute. Also, make sure you read carefully to understand any caps on expenses or expenses that are not allowed. Next slide, please. Budget and budget narrative. There should be no expenses in the budget that are not referenced in the proposal narrative. The budget should include adequate funding to fully implement the project, but not more than the amount listed in the solicitation as the available funding amount. The total federal request entered into the FY2024 should match the total federal request in the application budget for the entire project period. And more information on the budget narrative can be found on page 30 of the solicitation. Next slide, please. More information on the budget and budget narrative. Just a few things to remember. Itemize the budget for each year of the grant. A 25% match is required. There is no minimum required amount for a cash match. Do not report any overmatch in the budget. However, you may discuss the overmatch in the narrative. Applicants should estimate the cost of travel and accommodations for up to 3 for categories 1 and 2, or 8 in category 3, team members to attend up to 2 conferences and or trainings each year to support ongoing capacity and success in implementation. And the last one is prior approval, planning, and reporting of conference, meeting, or training cost is required. And the next slide just gives you a general understanding on how to calculate a match. And on page 31 of the solicitation, there is a link for the application resource guide, which will provide additional information on the match requirement and step-by-step instructions for entering match amounts in the budget. Next slide. So for the adult treatment court solicitation, there is a match waiver. The required match may be waived upon request by a grantee. To be considered for a waiver of match, a letter of request signed by the authorized representative must be submitted with the application describing the reason for the request. A match waiver request must be submitted as a separate attachment to the application through Just Grants. So please, if you are having a financial hardship, if your program or the applicant is having a financial hardship, please don't hesitate to submit a match waiver, because we do want you to be able to participate and receive grant funding. Next slide, please. A few additional attachments that you may have to attach to your application include resumes of your treatment court team members, the tribal authorization resolution, letters of support, research and evaluation independence and integrity statement, the timeline web-based form, the state substance abuse agency director of designee letter, and the memorandum of understanding signed by the key treatment court team members or by a designated agency representative. Next slide, please. A few more additional attachments to keep in mind: the fiscal agent memorandum of understanding signed by applicant and treatment court administrator, the chief justice, state court administrator or designee letter, statewide applicants managing subawards, disclosure of lobbying activities, the DOJ certified standard assurances, the DOJ certification regarding lobbying, and the applicant disclosure and justification for DOJ high-risk grantees if you are a high-risk grantee. Next slide. Equitable access. BJA requires applicants to describe a plan to collect and examine access and retention data to identify and eliminate disparities that exist for race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability in admission protocols or elsewhere in the adult treatment court program. The plan may include the use of the All Rise and National Center for State Courts Equity and Inclusion Assessment Toolkit, or incorporate the American University Racial and Ethnic Disparities RED Program Assessment Tool. Now we have an additional poll question. Does your treatment court currently collect and examine data to identify and eliminate access and retention disparities in your program?
Courtney, we've launched the question. We can let you know when we get a good response percentage.
Thank you.
These are some great attendees, already up to 65% responding. go for about a few more seconds. Then I'll share the results. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it looks like about 40% of those responding said yes, about 17% said no, and about 43% said unsure. And again, we'll include these results in the frequently asked questions.
Now I will turn the presentation back over to my colleague Ingrid.
Thank you, Courtney. So with regards to MAT, BJA will offer technical assistance to grantees to build or expand their capacity to provide access to medication-assisted treatment. For more information regarding BJA's provisions on MAT, please go to page 9 of the solicitation or go to the link provided with that solicitation. Next slide. The Controlled Substance Act, the award recipients are prohibited from using federal funds to support programs or activities that violate the Controlled Substances Act, regardless of local or state practices or laws. Programs or activities funded under a BJA ATC award must ensure that participants are tested periodically for the use of controlled substances, including medical marijuana. The violent offender prohibition. A person who is presently charged with an offense as described in Section 34 U.S.C. would be ineligible to participate. Disqualifying convictions are only those convictions linked with this particular subset of the law that occur after the initiation of proceedings that led to the person's consideration for participation in the drug court program. Next slide, please. Violent offender prohibition. Not included in the violent offender definition are charges that are dropped or reduced to a non-violent offense or charge prior to a person's participation in the program, or convictions punishable by less than 1 year of incarceration. I do want to make mention that different funds, such as the Burn State Crisis Intervention Program, do not have this same prohibition. Burn skip funds would be, you would be eligible to use these funds. However, it has to be documented that these funds are being used with that the funds are burn skip funds and not adult treatment court funds. On to our next poll question. If you have been a past recipient of these funds, has the violent offender prohibition impacted your treatment court's ability to accept a new program participant?
So we've launched the poll question, and when we get high response rate, we can end the poll. There's a second part to this question as well, where if you answer yes, we would like to know the impact of that prohibition. So after this one, be ready for the next question, which is related to the outcome of this one. We'll go for a few more seconds and then we'll share the results. Okay. So it looks like the majority are unsure, 49%, followed by no, that it hasn't impacted the ability, and then about 21% said yes. So Of those 21, or you can answer this as well, how has this impacted you? Minimally, moderately, or significantly? If you can gauge the impact from the violent offender prohibition. I'll wait just a few more seconds. Great. I'll end the poll and share the results. So it looks like moderately these programs have been impacted by this prohibition, and 14% say significantly. So that ends our polling questions. We want to thank you very much for participating.
The National Treatment Court Resource Center, or NTCRC, has created a helpful tool to assist applicants through the solicitation application process. Depending on the category you're applying under, NTCRC has created a checklist to simplify the process. We highly encourage you to visit their website. In addition, BJA may require grantees to participate in the Painting the Current Picture survey, a national report on treatment courts in the United States. Next slide, please. Tips for applicants. Some of the tips that we would like to offer today are just grants. Please carefully read the how to apply instructions linked in the solicitation and give yourself plenty of time to complete the grants.gov and just grant submissions by the established deadlines. You can find these deadlines on page 15 of the solicitation. With regard to SF424/UEI and SAM, make sure the correct UEI number is entered in the SF424 and that it is registered in SAM. The specific agency registered under this UEI number in SAM will be responsible for submitting the full application in just grants and administering the award if it is funded. SF424-applicant information-budget. The federal request amount is the total grant award you are requesting, and it must be reflected in the Just Grants application, applicant information, and budget. The total project costs entered in the budget must include federal and non-federal costs. Budget and allowable costs do not include any of the prohibited costs listed on page 30 of the solicitation. Budget subawards versus procurement contracts. You should carefully review the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide, also linked in the solicitation, subsection titled Information on Proposed Subawards and Proposed Procurement Contracts, and the resources linked to therein to ensure you properly categorize your costs in these sections. Budget match. Every line item in the budget should be identified as either federal or non-federal. All non-federal match cost items must meet the same allowability guidelines as federal costs. As noted earlier, do not include excessive match over the 25% requirement in the budget. Application attachments in general. Please follow the instructions exactly in the application and submission section beginning on page 17. It is helpful for reviewers if you upload each required attachment as a separate file, named and numbered to match the solicitation. If you combine files, please include a table of contents. Application attachments, common issues. The disclosure of pending applications is required for all applicants and is completed in Just Grants. Please see page 34 of the solicitation. The research and evaluation, independence, and integrity statement attachment is required if you are proposing to use federal funds to pay an outside evaluator. More information can be found on page 33 of the solicitation. The timeline web-based form must indicate the number of program participants to be served quarterly to demonstrate how the total number of anticipated participants will be served before the end of the grant period. This form is completed in Just Grants, and also more information can be found on page 33. Application resources. Handing it back to you, Courtney.
Our final section for today is the application resources. On this slide, you will find several resources that you can use while you are preparing your application. And please note that you will receive a copy of the presentation, and all of the links will be live so that you will be able to click on the links and use the information that you need for your application. Some of the links include links to the National Treatment Court Resource Center, the Adult Treatment Court Best Practice Standards, the 10 key components for adult drug courts, the 10 essential elements of opioid courts, and the Adult Treatment Court Program Training and Technical Assistance. Next slide, please. BJA also has a grant application education series. So please, if you would like to look at previous webinar recordings and transcripts and slides, that is the link that you will use to do so. Next slide. The next slide gives you multiple links to the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide. Next slide. And also, BJA's Just Grants Grants Management System also has several links, as you can see on your right, to learn more about the Department of Justice's grants and payment management systems. Next slide, please. For application assistance, we have several ways that you can receive application assistance through grants.gov. We have a customer support hotline, web and email, and also Just Grants Technical Support also has a customer service hotline and web and email. So please use these resources. They are here to help you. We are here to help you. If you have any questions that you need answered, please don't hesitate to reach out. Next slide, please. You can also stay connected through our social media sites. You will see the links to Facebook, X, and YouTube, and also BJA's website. And then we have the quick reference guide at the bottom of the slide here with the important contacts that you may need as you're preparing your application. And as you can see, we have grants.gov contact, Just Grants, and also the Department of Justice OJP Response Center. Next slide. So if you have any questions, please enter them in the Q&A box, and we will be here to answer your questions.
Great, thank you, Ingrid and Courtney. Very informative, and we hope all the attendees found the information helpful. My name is Kristen Duvall. I'm one of the co-directors at the National Treatment Court Resource Center, and so thank you again for joining us. Again, as we mentioned, if you have questions and you haven't done so already, please put those in the Q&A. We will be going through those and answering them live. And we are going to start with a few questions that we received prior to the webinar. So Ingrid and Courtney, the first question, are we eligible to apply to this grant if we currently have an open federal award with SAMHSA or BJA?
So the answer to that is it depends. Yes, if the active award closes prior to the start of the new award. For example, the active award you have closes on September 30th, 2023, and the new award starts October 1st, 2023. In this scenario, it's not required that the proposed application be for a different project from the active award. If the applicant receives the new award, a request for a no-cost extension for the active award may be denied if the new award proposes the same project as the active award. If the active award is not scheduled to close prior to the start of the new award, the applicant would still be eligible to apply for a new award, but will need to propose a different project in response to the solicitation.
Great. The next question, is an adult treatment court itself an eligible applicant for this solicitation?
So per this solicitation, the following entities are eligible: state governments, special district governments, city or township governments, county governments, public housing authorities, Indian housing authorities, and Native American tribal governments, federally recognized, to include public or private entities acting on behalf of a single treatment court through agreement with a state, city, township, county, or tribal government.
Great. There is a requirement for collecting required data that grantees are expected to map community resources to support their programs. Does this need to be completed as part of the application submission, or can this be a part of the grant implementation activities?
Yeah, so this does not need to be completed as part of the application. The solicitation indicates that the applicant must describe its current ability to collect and analyze client-level demographic, performance, and outcome data, and to conduct regular assessments of program service delivery and performance. In regard to mapping community resources, this should be completed as part of the application process.
The next one is regarding some staffing. If we want to replace part-time positions with full-time positions, how should this be handled to avoid supplanting?
In general, if you're proposing to use federal funds to pay current employees to work on the grant-funded project, the previously budgeted local or state funds for those employees must be used to continue the previous duties, such as backfilling the positions. Supplanting would occur if the local funds for the positions were used for another purpose, or as savings to the local budget if federal funds took over payment of all or part of the position. And the OJP definition for supplanting is: a state or unit of local government reduces state or local funds for an activity specifically because federal funds are available or expected to be available to fund that same activity. When supplanting is not permitted, federal funds must be used to supplement existing state or local funds for program activities and may not replace state or local funds that have been appropriated or allocated for the same purpose. Additionally, federal funds may not replace state or local funding that is required by law. If a question of supplanting arises, the applicant or grantee will be required to substantiate that the reduction in non-federal resources occurred for reasons other than the recipient or expected recipient of federal funds.
Great. A team member is listed as a researcher / evaluator / management information specialist. Can this position be further defined?
A team member that is designated to collect data for the program to include but not limited to the performance data reporting requirement of the program.
These next two reference specific pages of the solicitation. So page 23 of the solicitation states that the ATC program's authorizing statute requires participants to pay for treatment and restitution. If the program has partnerships that assist with the cost of treatment, does that run afoul of the requirement that participants pay for treatment themselves? Alternatively, can grant funds be requested and used to pay for treatment services or offset the cost of evaluations and treatment?
The answer to this one is per the solicitation, authorizing statute requires participants to pay for treatment and restitution. It does not allow a fee to be imposed on the participant that would interfere with their rehabilitation. Alternatively, treatment court services are not an allowable use of adult treatment court funds under this solicitation.
And then on page 30 to 31 of the solicitation, must applicants budget grant funds for training and or conferences? Under the prior approval, planning, and reporting section, it seems that requesting funds for training and conferences would be optional. However, the next paragraph states, applicants should estimate the costs of travel and accommodations for up to 3 in categories 1 and 2, or 8 if you're a category 3 applicant, team members to attend up to 2 conferences and or trainings each year.
So yes, applicants must budget within their grant request these types of activities. OJP strongly encourages every applicant to propose to use award funds for any conference. If an applicant proposes to use award funds for a conference, then applicants should estimate the cost of travel and accommodations for up to however many is allocated under that category.
The next question is about a memorandum of understanding. Do MOUs have to be in place as part of the application submission? For example, must the fiscal agent MOU, which is required, be fully executed prior to application submission?
An entity, for example, a unit of local government or county applying for funding on behalf of an adult treatment court must submit the required fiscal agent MOU with the application. If this is not the case, the fiscal agent MOU is not required.
Okay. Great. So now we're going to move on to the questions that we received during the webinar. So thank you again. Please continue including your questions in that Q&A. So can the 25% match include any federal funding from other sources? The answer from BJA is no. Generally, other funds cannot be used as a match toward a BJA grant. However, federally recognized tribes may be able to use funds issued to that tribe from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, or BIA, for performing law enforcement functions on tribal land. Another question, in the event of a nonprofit organization applying for funding to continue working with a treatment court team, would it still be recommended to obtain resumes from members of the team not part of that organization, i.e. the judge, prosecutor on the treatment court team? And the answer is, per the solicitation, nonprofit entities are not eligible for funding under this solicitation. Does failure to include any of the recommended attachments weigh more heavily than any other? Specifically, is failure to attach an MOU signed by key partners weighed more heavily than other recommended attachments? The answer is BJA encourages all applicants to submit all of the recommended attachments. None of the recommended forms are weighed more heavily than the others. Another question, does BJA offer a grant application that does not include expansion, where my program can sustain the expansion after the expansion grant expires? So the answer is no. After a previous award has ended, an applicant may apply for a new enhancement award. BJA does not ask applicants as part of the application process to describe their sustainability plan, BJA does ask applicants as part of the application process to describe their sustainability plan, detailing how the adult treatment court operations will be maintained after federal assistance ends. Another question about the SF-424 document. Can you discuss how the SF-424 budget request must match the amount in Just Grants. It makes it difficult when you haven't designed your program yet, but want to get access to Just Grants as soon as possible. Is it okay to just put the maximum average award amount? So the answer is BJA recommends the applicants that the dollar amount in the SF-424 matches the amount in Just Grants. Another question, can this grant fund a treatment court that has clients with mental health issues aside from substance use disorders, or only SUD or co-occurring disorders? So the BJA adult treatment court funds are to be used to support participants with substance use disorders or co-occurring disorders. If treatment court participants have any of those violent offenses, would they be eligible, or is it a time frame of those types of convictions? And there is not a time frame on the violent offender prohibition. Can the ATC be the applicant? And these are unanswered.
So the question was, can the ATC be the
Be
applicant?
the applicant, yes.
Yes, as long as it's associated with the state, local, government entity.
Okay, great. On page 20 of the solicitation, there's reference to jurisdictional receipt of federal funding. Is jurisdiction defined as state, or is it court specific? On page 28 under part D, there's a requirement for data collection. Can data collection happen among the program partners?
Yes, data collection can happen upon with program partners. So for example, the actual adult treatment court program, if they are partnering with, let's say, getting assistance from a training and technical assistance partner, they can also assist with data gathering.
Okay. So in reference to jurisdictional receipt of federal funding, is jurisdiction defined as state, or is it court specific? Looks like this is referencing some verbiage on page 20 of the solicitation.
So jurisdiction is court or local township, local county. Those would be the different jurisdictions.
This question is about somebody operating under a current grant and if they're eligible. So if our court already operating under another federal grant that will likely end at some point in early 2025, does it make sense to still apply under this grant? Are the dates that funding would begin flexible at all around this?
So you would be able to apply if your current grant ends prior to the start of this grant, of the 2024 grant.
Okay, great. We have a couple questions around the priority areas. So do the tribal court programs need to meet all OJP and BJA priorities? I believe that might be referencing the priorities that you mentioned at the beginning of the solicitation, or at the beginning of this webinar, I'm sorry.
So the priorities, let me see, it was on slide. Give us 1 second.
14 and 15.
Not the priority areas, it's the priorities.
Yeah.
They would need to meet the priorities.
Okay.
Okay. Then another question regarding priority area 1A and 1B. Are there any definitive sourcing concern what would be defined as population-specific organization or a type of community that is historically underserved and disproportionately affected by crime.
So a couple of examples are rural communities, where perhaps resources are, they're in need of different resources for adult treatment courts. Another population could be, we spoke about the tribal communities and tribal nations. Let's see. So any community that has shown that there is a need for additional services and funding.
Okay, great. Regarding priority area B, addressing rural or tribal communities, is this still a priority?
Yes.
Okay. Is the 6-month planning phase applicable to all, I'm assuming that means applicable to all categories?
It would be applicable to category 1.
Okay. Question regarding staffing. Our judges and prosecutors are on contract. Does this grant allow for contracted individuals to receive the mandatory 6-month foundational training?
Can you repeat that?
Our judges and prosecutors are on contract. Does this grant allow for contracted staff to receive the mandatory 6-month foundational training?
Yes, this it does allow for contracted staff to receive the mandatory 6-month foundational training, as long as they are a part of the treatment team. If they are part of the team, that's fine. They will be able to receive the training.
Okay. In terms of eligible programs, are family dependency and neglect court eligible for these funds?
No, those would be under a OJJDP. They receive funding for family and juvenile courts. This is more specific for adult treatment courts.
Under category 2, could more than one court be included in the application? For example, if we wanted to apply with 3 courts that are part of a regional consortium but are not statewide, would we be eligible?
One entity would have to apply, and then sub grants, sub awards could be provided to subrecipients.
Okay. This is another question about staffing. I know could funds be used to hire a data analyst to build or enhance data collection and use of key drug court operation and outcome data?
Yes, funds can be used to hire a data analyst to for data purposes.
Is the 20 page limit for this particular solicitation? If I apply for category 2 and 3, is it a 20-page limit for each category?
Yes, a 20-page limit for each, as it indicates in the basic minimum requirements.
This is regarding the SFLLL form or the lobbying form. Having difficulty submitting my SFLLL form. We don't lobby or have a lobbyist, but this is a required field on the form. It doesn't seem to allow me to submit until it's filled in. How do you proceed?
I would suggest for the individual to give one of the help desk a call to see if it's a technical issue, and to have more assistance walking them through the process.
Is there a template we can mock up before entering in the web-based form for the timeline and the budget? So after this webinar, we will actually be sending out the Just Grants kind of manual that was referenced earlier in the webinar as an attachment. And there are specific pages that are relevant to that timeline. And so we would recommend you taking a look at pages 65 to 69 of that document. It gives you actual screenshots of what the fields look like as it relates to that timeline. There's also separate screenshots of the budget, so you can see exactly what you need to fill in for both of those documents. I hope that helps.
I would also make the additional recommendation for anyone that needs a little bit more guidance to go to the National Treatment Court Resource Center. They do have additional resources there for grants and specifically under each category.
Great. This question is regarding the SF-424. Can I change the total on the SF-424? I'm assuming this might be the budget SF-424 document in grants.gov, and now that they're working in Just Grants, the budget total has changed. Is there a way to revise that in Just Grants?
I believe there is. However, I would also suggest a phone call to the help desk. As long as both budget totals align in Just Grants and grants.gov, that's what we need. But in order to change it, you can do it. And to receive more technical assistance with it, I would recommend a phone call or email to the help desk.
Does the number of participants served mean new participants or newly and previously admitted participants?
Participants served would be new, current, new and current participants. And if you would like to also retain data on participants that have served and completed the program, that would be great too.
Okay. The solicitation mentions continuation awards. Are these generally handled through reapplication through the same process, or is there an alternate process to be considered for continuation funding at the conclusion of the grant period?
An extension request could be made in order to continue with the program.
Okay. Let's see. We plan to implement our adult treatment core in July of 2024, so in a few months, which is exciting. We have a legislative state grant awarded to the county. Can we utilize those funds as the 25% matching funds? Also, are we still eligible to apply for a foundation grant? We received the training in August of 2023.
So the local county funds or state funds can be used for the 25% match. And with regard to foundational training, since the 6-month process, I think they said in July it would start. So they could still be eligible for the foundational training.
Okay, great. Who would you include as key personnel for this grant?
So for this grant, anyone that works within the drug treatment court work group, that could be a judge, a prosecutor, defense attorney, community supervision officers, mental health and behavioral health practitioners. Some jurisdictions even include local police officers. So anyone that would make up the adult treatment court work group.
Great. There are a couple questions regarding nonprofit agencies being the applicant. So can a nonprofit agency be the applicant?
No.
Okay. Can you repeat how attachments should be labeled?
It's great. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Hi,
Okay,
Greg. Hi, Greg.
Yeah. I just want to add to that last one. Usually and typically a nonprofit wouldn't be eligible to apply, but we do have language in there indicating that if they have a partnership with a governmental entity under the other category, then they will be able to apply.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was trying to respond to some of the questions.
Yeah, no. Great.
So.
I think the question was around how should attachments be labeled for uploading in Just Grants?
Oh, okay. In terms of attachments, you would probably just want to label them based off what you're submitting. If there's a particular title to what we're asking you to submit, then you would probably label it based off that. And obviously what you want to do when we're reviewing these applications, you want to be pretty clear on what you have and labeling it so that when we have our peer reviewers reading the applications, they aren't challenged with trying to find information. So, I mean, that's also another tip to make sure that when you're labeling things, you can make it as easy as possible for people to be able to find that information who will be reviewing the applications.
Great.
And if someone wants to refer back to the webinar, slides 39 and 40 give you an indication of what's recommended and what's required and the titles to use.
Okay, great. Let's see, we plan to implement our adult treatment court in July of 2020. Oh, sorry, that one, I think you already answered that one. I apologize, that was regarding the match. If you are starting a treatment court this summer, after the grant application time passes, but before the October 1, 2024 effective date, should you apply under category 1 or category 2?
I'll take that one. So if you already have an active award, you would be able to, it just depends on what stage are you at with that new, if it's for category 1, that's only for a new court looking to start a new treatment court. If you already have an active court, then you would probably want to apply under an enhancement because you already have a operational court or treatment court.
All right, let's see. So this is about managing subawards. Just to confirm, the statewide applicants managing subawards is only required for category 3 statewide applicants. Is this correct?
I'll take that one. Yes, that's correct. If you are a statewide, you would be, that would pertain to you within the solicitation, yes.
Okay. We are a nonprofit treatment agency that is contracted with an existing drug court, and the judge requested that we apply on behalf of the existing drug court. Are we eligible to apply?
Again, I'll take that. If the nonprofit entity is partnered with and have an agreement with a governmental agency, then they would be able to apply on behalf of a treatment court. Again, if you're applying on behalf of a treatment court and you're not the treatment court, that would also require you to submit the fiscal agent MOU, only to make sure that there is a partnership between the entity that's applying and the actual treatment court.
Okay. If applying on behalf of a veterans treatment court, Is there any restriction as to whether you can apply to both ATC and VTC grants simultaneously?
Yeah, I'll take that. So, yes. So with the adult treatment court solicitation, you can apply both for funding to support a adult treatment court and a veteran treatment court under the same application. If you're looking to, what you need to also keep in mind when you do that, I believe it's in the abstract, you need to indicate the percentage of funding or the amount of funding that's going to be allotted to the adult treatment court program and what's going to be allotted to the veteran treatment court, because there's two separate appropriations of funding that were received from Congress. And then the other thing is, if you're only applying for a veteran treatment court, then you would only apply for under the veteran treatment court solicitation, but you can apply for adult treatment court and a veteran treatment court under the adult treatment court solicitation.
Okay. Does the grant pay for transportation for participants to get to treatment and court?
I can take this one.
Yep.
Yes, you can apply for funding for things like transportation. In the past, applications have been received to pay for things such as bus passes and other modes of transportation for participants.
Okay. Does a single participant who qualifies under the violent offender prohibition result in not applying grant funds for the entire program or excluding this individual?
So a drug treatment court can use additional funds such as burn skip funds for court participants that have violent crimes.
Okay. How can education consultants registered as a small business become sub-recipients of grant funding? This seems like a great opportunity for vocational rehabilitation agencies.
It's great. I could probably take that. When you're when you're submitting an application, if there's areas or gaps in your application where you could probably make your application stronger, and we encourage applications that have strong partnerships, then if that entity or that educational entity that could provide additional support to that treatment court, then you would want to make sure they're written into the application. And or if you are that entity, you would want to connect with a treatment court that may be applying.
Okay. So this is in reference to page 30 of the solicitation. This is a direct quote, must forgo any profit or management fee. So specifically, what is defined as profit and what is to be done with the profit?
I'll take that. So any profit, and I don't have the solicitation right in front of me, but any profit would probably be looking at if you are, if part of the statute language on adult treatment courts is that a participant has to, I wouldn't say pay for services, but there is an obligation from a participant, then that would be, I think, the profit that the treatment court would be bringing in as a result of providing those services. So, and again, that's part of the statute where that if a participant is in a program, that they have to contribute to the program in terms of, I wouldn't say a fine, but a fee.
Okay. What if we request funding for the same project, but a different aspect of the project? For example, if we have an OJP award that helps fund our Healing to Wellness Court, can we apply for some court personnel to enhance a current OJP award project?
Yes, you can apply for funding to enhance another part of the project. You just can't apply for duplicate funding. So if you would like to enhance the current project with hiring staff, you would be able to do that.
Great. This is around the due date. The cover page states that the applications are due April 1, but the first due date in this webinar indicated May 2nd.
I'm looking at the first page of the solicitation and it says applications in grant.gov. The deadline is May 2nd. Applications in Just Grants are due on May 9th.
Yeah, that's what we have as well.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's a different solicitation that you're looking at.
There is an open SAMHSA solicitation that is due April 1st. So I wonder if they're confusing the due dates. Yeah. Can you clarify what expenses are allowable if a training event that brings multiple jurisdictions together is proposed? For example, we could propose to pay airline mileage and hotel expenses, but not food.
Correct. Airline, lodging, local travel, for example, cab or bus transportation, but not food, not any gift cards, not any type of, for example, vehicle purchases to transport people at a conference, and no beverages as well.
Okay. And I know we have a couple more questions and we still have quite a few questions outstanding. So we do want to let everybody know that we will be compiling all of the questions that were read aloud. And if there are some that we don't get to, we will be preparing a frequently asked questions document. So all of your questions will be answered and those will be sent to you via email and also made available on the BJA and the NTCRC websites. So not to fret. To clarify, any BJA grant awarded cannot be used if the established treatment court takes defendants with any violent offenses.
This is Greg. I'll take that. So it's pretty clear the violent offender prohibition doesn't allow for BJA funding to support, or the adult truck court BJA funding to support a violent offender. And again, there's no time frame on that. It's just, it's the current violent offender prohibition, and it you can't use funding under this solicitation or this program to support someone who has or provides services to an individual or participant, or have a participant be in a program who has a violent offense.
Okay. Can you edit the amount entered on the SF-424 in grants.gov later? In other words, go on, sorry, Greg.
Yeah, this is Greg. Yeah, I think I heard the question come up before. I think, and we had that challenge before because I think when you have to submit the application in grants.gov, the S4, because it's a two process. So you submit the SF-424 early, and once you complete that process, then that kind of seals that up and closes, I believe. I'm not totally sure. I would definitely follow up what Ingrid mentioned in terms of following with the help desk. But I believe once you submit it through grants.gov, then that closes out. Then you move into the Just Grant process. And there was a previous question related to, what do you do if you submitted the total amount in the grants.gov through the SF-424, and it's different. I mean, we recommend that it be the same, but we do understand that there may be a challenge when you submit it in grants.gov and something changes and you might not have access to grants.gov once you've submitted in there. That wouldn't limit a person from or be eligible for funding.
All right. Can a data from a statewide grantee, so category 3, can you hire a data analyst with these funds?
Yes, you can hire staff to collect data in addition to other positions related to the adult treatment court work team.
Let's see. We have a number of specialty courts, so a drug court, a sobriety court, and a co-occurring disorder court in the county. We would like to hire an administrator to centralize some functions: market, partner development, chair of county specialty court collaboration. If this can be funded, how would you suggest it get written?
Well, this is Greg. I'll take that one. We wouldn't recommend how you would necessarily submit the application. I mean, it could be done in one application where you could submit one application that supports 3 jurisdictions. So that one position may support 3 different treatment courts or specialty courts. But we wouldn't want to recommend. It would be what you deemed most appropriate for your needs in your jurisdiction.
Okay. This question is regarding using opioid settlement funds as funds for the match source. Is that permitted?
So this is Greg again. So I think, let me see if I can see that question, because I'm not quite sure what it mean by the opioid funds. I mean, if that's, I'm thinking that might be similar to the previous question related to federal funds. If that's another federal award or funding, then you wouldn't be able to use that as a match for another federal award.
Okay. Question regarding temporary housing. What are some temporary housing options? Like, would that include extended stay hotels and the like?
Yeah, this is, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, I can answer that. This is Courtney. Yes, you can, and it really depends on the needs of your community. So if that is what is available in your community, and you can explain that in your narrative, then absolutely.
Great. There's one question about the citations to be used in the project narrative document. And there's not a preferred format. Just be consistent would be our recommendation. Let's see. There's a question regarding what is meant by to maintain capacity. I don't have any more information than that. If the person is still on, if you could clarify. Can you list the types of services paid for by BJA grants? So I'm wondering if this is the allowable services through this solicitation.
Yeah, this is Greg. We do have examples. So there's a lot of different ways you can use the funding that we might not always cover. I know that UNCW, I know you guys also, along with All Rise, have done in the past a webinar on the innovative ways you can use BJA funding for the adult treatment court program solicitation. But we do have in last year's adult treatment court FAQs and examples of, I think it may be 15 to 20 different ways that you can use funding. I don't know if we could probably send a, maybe I'll try to send a link in the Q&A or to the chat. But it has an example of some of the different ways you can use. But I know we've done in the past, and there's probably recordings of that webinar too that talks about the different ways you can use the BJA funding. And again, it primarily focuses on the goals and objectives of the treatment court program in terms of how you need to use the funds.
Okay. Great. If a nonprofit entity applies through an agreement with the state, county, township, or tribal government, would the agreement be in the format of an MOU?
This is Greg. Yes, that the MOU would be the formal agreement with the nonprofit and the entity that would be applying.
Okay.
In the
And then we
government.
have just one more related to that particular question. With the nonprofit answer just now, is there specific information that is needed if a nonprofit submits on behalf of a county government agency?
Yes, this is Courtney. I can answer that. Information would be that I would suggest that you put in the application is the relationship and what the nonprofit will be providing for the program, and also resumes of the individuals who are with the nonprofit, who are employed by the nonprofit, and most importantly, the memorandum of understanding.
Great. And that actually concludes the Q&A. Again, we will be compiling all of those questions that were answered live, as well as additional questions that came in prior to the webinar in the format of a Q&A. So you'll be receiving those as an attendee within the next couple of days, as well as the recording and the PowerPoint slides. So be looking for that in your inbox. We will also make those available on the BJA website as well as the NTCRC websites. We would like to thank you again for attending. And Ingrid or Courtney, I don't know if you want to give any parting words.
Thank you so much for attending the webinar today. Please continue to reach out if you have questions. Please reach out to the help desks so that you can continue to get guidance through the process, and we look forward to receiving and reviewing your applications.
Thank you.
Thank you.